Hello everybody, Rob B here with Rob D, and you are of course listening to the Property Podcast. This week we go behind the scenes and teach you how to run a successful letting agency.
Yeah, this is a topic that's come up a couple of times in recent conversations, so we thought we would share what we know about running a letting agency. We've been doing it for a couple of years now, because it is something that a lot of people seem to want to do. And even if you don't, then there's still lots of lessons that you can apply to your own portfolio. So that's coming up. But first, we should reference a busy couple of weeks that we've had, because we've had our last two summits, Property Hub summits, of the year. So this is where we spend a whole day with 16 property investors, helping them overcome their current obstacles, set out their goals for the future, and leave them with a plan to go away with and set them up for a great year next year. So we did one up in Manchester, the first time we've ever done it outside London. And then we did one back in London just last weekend. And Rob, I don't know about you, but I had a great time, and it was really interesting, the differences between the two groups.
Yeah, it really was. It was a different dynamic, but in a good way. Both were really enjoyable. It was nice for us to get a different mix as well. Some of the challenges are universal, and everybody has them, but some seem regional as well. I think there's a lot more burnout and time pressures in London, which I don't think will shock many people, but it was really obvious to see. Now, that's not to say people aren't burnt out in the north, but it just seems more exaggerated in the south. But it was also really good to do a review of the people from a few months ago to see how they'd gotten on with their progress. And it's incredible. The amount of properties that the people have bought between them in just a few short months was incredibly impressive. And the progress made is absolutely fantastic. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how these people who we've just met get on over the next few months and how they develop their portfolios and their plans.
Yeah, it's always really striking doing the catch-ups. It's amazing just to see what people have achieved, because, you know, it's 3 months is the blink of an eye. It can so easily go by and you do nothing at all. But these people committed to doing something. They wrote it down. They told us what they were going to do. And then, without exception, they all did it, which is really amazing. You don't have to come on a summit to do that. I mean, we're done for the year now, but there's one for February, which is now on sale. If you do want to come to us to a summit, we'd love to see you, but you don't have to. You could do the same thing yourself just by doing some good goal setting, making sure you've got your accountability in place and building your network. We kind of give you that process on a plate and we supercharge it, but there's nothing to stop you doing it yourself. But the point is, when you do set goals and you really go after them, it's unbelievable what you can achieve in a short space of time.
It's incredible. And actually, Rob, it's probably worth mentioning, on the propertyhub.net, there's a free course on goal setting, so take advantage of it. If you haven't yet, well, you're missing a trick, because as Rob said, setting goals and the accountability part, which we talk about in that course, is incredibly powerful. Yeah,
so it might seem like the year is nearly over, but now is not the time to start coasting. If you put your mind to it, there's still a heck of a lot you can get done before the clock ticks over to 2017.
Oh, massively. I think this time of year is a prime time for investors. This is where the amateurs are switching off. This is when I get excited, because there's a good few weeks left. And this can be, I found it anyway, so one of the busiest times of the year, certainly for myself, because the switched on investors are active now, because the deals can be not like 20% better than 2 months ago, but just that fractional little better than it has been previously. So don't switch off if you're hunting for investments. Keep alert. Christmas and New Year is still plenty of distance in the future. I know it doesn't seem like it, but there's lots you can do, as Rob said.
Now, another thing that you can do is make sure that you get along to a meetup before the end of the year, because there is still one more of those. We had our November meetups last week. I unfortunately couldn't make it along to any of them, but Rob more than made up for it by going and launching our new meetup in Stratford. How was it?
It was good. It was fun. Great meetup leaders, Jeff Rowe and Ali. Thank you for putting that on and launching that event. I think that you're going to have a lot of fun if you go to that meetup. Great atmosphere. Good venue too as well, not too far from the station. So if you don't know Stratford, and I don't know it that well, it's easy to find. Good venue. Lots of areas to tuck ourselves away as the meetup and talk and discuss and network. So really good meetup. If you are in the London area, you're absolutely spoilt now. You've got Richmond, you've got Waterloo, you've got King's Cross, and now you've got Stratford. So plenty of choice if you're in London. But don't worry, if you're not in London, we got 25 plus other meetups all around the country and across the world. So as Rob said, take advantage of it. There's one left, the December meetup, the first Thursday of every single month. Free property meetups across the UK and some other locations across the planet too.
Okay, let's crack on with our news story this week. Now, I'm sure you've all got your subscription to Mortgage Strategy magazine. I know you have, Rob. And you couldn't have failed to notice that the cover story is on short-term lets. This is a topic which I think has come up at every meetup that I've been to, and it came up a few times at the summit as well. Basically, now Airbnb and similar sites have become really popular. A lot of people are now using it when they travel instead of staying in hotels. And so they're naturally thinking, well, I'm paying quite a lot for one night. If I rented this out on Airbnb, one of my properties, then I could make a lot more money than I could as a single let. Now, whenever we talk about this, the issue of lending comes up because obviously a lot of people just do it on the quiet, and sometimes you get away with it and sometimes you won't, and it can get very nasty. But if you actually want to do this by the book and get your mortgage lender to agree to letting a property out on Airbnb, it can be extremely challenging. And this feature goes through all of that in a really comprehensive way. I found it really useful because it talks about all the major mortgage providers, whether they'll allow short-term lets on your own home or a buy-to-let, if they will put up your interest rate or charge you any money for it. And it talks about some of the challenges as well. So if you do want to go down the Airbnb route, there are a couple of lenders, I think literally a couple, who will actually agree to it without any provisions. So it's quite a complicated topic, and this article does a good job of laying it all out. So if this is something that you're interested in, you're thinking about going down the Airbnb route, this is well worth checking out. It's a good kind of starting point for your research, and we're going to link to this story in the show notes for this episode, which are thepropertyhub.net/agency.
Yeah, that's one to note down because you're going to get a lot of links today. Because Rob, I think it's about time we teach people how to do that. How do you and I run a successful letting agency, and how can other people do it too?
Well, that is something that we are going to reveal right now. And as I said, this is something that's come up a few times in conversations recently, and I think that's quite natural. Many landlords, as they start to build up large-ish portfolios of their own, they start thinking, if they're self-managing, they start thinking about letting properties for other people too, as an extra income stream. And then you also get people who want to be in the property sector. They want to start their own business. So even if they don't have a big portfolio of their own, they want to start managing properties for other people. And it can be a really great business. It's got a lot going for it, but we can vouch for the fact that it is definitely not as easy as you might think. We've done it. We've made mistakes from it, and we're going to talk in this episode about what we think is important if you want to go on and do this yourself. And even if you've got no interest in doing this, we're going to apply these lessons to how you can use them for your own portfolio as well.
We will. So we're going to give you point by point what you need to do. Okay, so let's get started. And Rob, as you are the most qualified for the first point, I'll let you start.
Yes, so the first point is to get qualified. So to be in lettings, you don't need any kind of actual qualification. It's not mandatory. There's an argument that if you're looking after other people's properties and sort of taking on legal obligations on their behalf, you should, but you don't actually need a qualification. When we were starting Yellow, I took the National Federation of Property Professionals course, which is the one that you need to become a member of ALA, which is the Association of Residential Letting Agents. There's a lot of abbreviations in this episode. That's just the start. And even though I never planned to actually work in the business, so we knew from the start that it wasn't going to be us doing viewings or inspections. It wasn't going to be us talking to tenants. We knew that from the start. But even so, we thought it would be useful for one of us to do the qualification. And so we knew exactly what we were meant to be doing because we'd picked up a lot of experience from our own properties, but we thought it'd be useful to get a qualification. And I actually found it way more useful than I thought I would. I kind of thought that it was just going to be like kind of going through all the pages going, yeah, I know all this. And a lot of it I did know, or it was just common sense. But there were quite a few bits where it's like, didn't quite realize that, or hadn't thought about it in that way. So getting qualified is really useful. So if you are thinking about starting an agency, We're going to talk about all the steps to come, and getting a qualification means that as you do go through all these steps, you know that you're definitely doing it properly and you're doing it in the best way you possibly can. So my intuition is to always just go, I'll be fine, I'll figure it out and just bundle in. But this time, actually taking a couple of months and getting qualified was a really good move.
Another good move, though, is to get compliant. Maybe not as exciting as getting trained up and learning new skills, but still important. So ways we've become compliant are joining the property ombudsman. It's actually not that hard to join. And really, it's a no-brainer if you're going to be involved in property to join an ombudsman scheme. It doesn't cost a lot of money. One of the things you do need in conjunction with that, though, is professional indemnity insurance. They will require that to a certain amount. Again, it depending on the size of the agency, and if you're going to start small and look after your own stuff at first, then that won't be too expensive as well. And then client protection money. That's going to be quite important to your clients if you're representing other people. So make sure that money is protected. Arla are very keen for that. Well, when I say very keen, it's mandatory. So if you're going to join a body like Arla as well, which we have, you've got to jump through a lot of hoops, but it does give anybody you're representing that peace of mind that you've gone through all these steps and you've gone through all these checks to show that you are a good agent. Not a guarantee, of course, but if an agent's bothered to go through all theyese steps, it probably shows that they're more inclined to deliver a good service. And that's exactly what people will think of you if you're going to start offering this service out.
Yeah, definitely. But that alone is not enough. It's a crowded marketplace. So if you are looking at starting your own agency, then yes, being able to do a good job and demonstrate that you can do a good job is really important, but it's not enough. You need something that's going to make you stand out because landlords have got so much choice. Now, the important thing to realize, this is just like with any business, is that you're never going to be the right choice for absolutely every landlord. If you try to appeal to everyone, you'll end up with a really wishy-washy message that actually won't appeal to anyone all that much, and you'll find yourself really struggling to get business. What you need to do is work out what makes you unique. So it's called a USP, unique selling point, or another way to think about it is what is the niche that you're serving. So people shy away from this when they're starting businesses a lot of the time because they don't like the idea that some people aren't going to be the right client for them because they're scared about not having enough business. They want all the business. So they're trying to say, yeah, whoever you are, I can help you. But ultimately, by having the focus to say, you know, this is what I do. This is what I do differently. If you're this kind of person, this will be a great fit. If you're not, it won't. That will ultimately get you a lot further. So in our case, we were kind of setting out to serve people exactly like us. So with Yellow Lettings, it's for people who have got properties in multiple locations and they want to be able to talk to just one person about all of those properties rather than dealing with lots of different branches and want to be extremely hands-off. So we only offer one package, which is where we do everything. And it includes a rent guarantee. So the idea is we get you as close as possible to forgetting about the fact that you own a property until the rent comes in. And then you go, oh, that's a nice surprise. That's what we're aiming for. Now, that's not going to be right for probably the majority of people. Most people have only got properties in one location. Many people like to be more hands-on. A lot of people like to have a let-only option so they can then manage themselves. But we don't do any of that. We do one thing that suits people like us, and that's it. Other agencies you'll see are focusing on people who are a bit more focused on cost. So they'll have loads and loads of different components. And so you can pick which bits you want. So if you wanted to do the inventory yourself, you wouldn't need to pay for that, for example. That's a perfectly valid way of doing it. We just went down a different route. And there are plenty of other different niches you can go into as well.
There are. So what can you do? What could your model be? Well, when we were at the summit, somebody was looking at doing their own management and their own agency. And one particular niche, and one we suggested, is specialising in HMOs. Management for HMOs is really difficult. Yellow Lettings won't touch it. And other agencies that do, as Rob said before, some people just say, yeah, I'll take all the business. They don't do it very well. They do professional management, they do HMOs, and they do maybe an okay job or a good job on the normal stuff. But HMOs, they try and apply the same systems and techniques to HMOs and it all falls down. So having somebody who specialises in managing HMOs and that's all they do is very appealing. HMOs are very popular, but there aren't many agents out there who specialise in it. So business idea probably pinging away for many people right now. But if you can offer a letting agency that specialises in managing HMOs, you can charge more because it is a more demanding job, and people will be willing to pay more because it is so specialist. So there are lots of USPs out there. Get creative, start thinking. Ideas are easy, but make sure you have one, because if you don't, if you're just another agent popping up out of nowhere with no particular USP, you're going to struggle to survive. You'll also struggle to survive if you don't have systems and processes. We've covered this a lot in many, many podcasts, so I'm not going to dwell on it too much, but there's a lot you should be doing at every single stage. Hoping to remember it all is not a good way of approaching this. And this applies to any business, but because there's so many moving parts with a letting agency, having processes and systems is incredibly important. A book that I'd recommend reading if this is something you want to learn more about, processes and systems and checklists, is the Checklist Manifesto. Really, really good book. We'll link to it in the show notes, but check that out, read that book, and you'll learn more.
Yeah, systems are massively important because there is so much to keep track of, and you need to be able to prove everything as well, so actually have all the right paperwork. So systems can really help, but it's not the kind of business where you can absolutely systemize and automate everything down to the nth degree. It's a business where, because there are lots of people involved, weird stuff can happen all the time. We've got so many stories, and the team will have even more about things that have happened out of left field that you could never build a system quite for. And that makes it quite a time-intensive job. It's not the case that you can just build a system and then just sort of sit back and watch everything work. It's going to be quite time intensive. And that means that as you grow, you could easily find it sucking up all of your time. So if you're managing your own portfolio and then you start taking on properties for other people, but at the time you get up to, I don't know what number, but say you were trying to do 50 on your own or something like that, and you really need to be doing more than that in order to make a decent chunk of money out of it, you're going to be just running all over the place if you're not careful. And that's why building the right team is so important. Now, building a team, of course, costs money, but even if it's just part-time, bringing somebody in could make the world of difference to your business. So it could be somebody who just does some of the elements that can be systemized. So the process of issuing a new tenancy, for example, there's lots of different steps to it. But once you've got it right, that is something that you could potentially pass over to somebody else. They could even be someone who's remote from you. They don't have to be sitting in an office, and they could do that, leaving you to do the bits that are harder to systemize. Or you could bring somebody in to balance out your strengths and weaknesses. So say that you are somebody who's really salesy, you're great with people, you're brilliant at going out and winning the business, but you're not so strong on the detail. Well, you need someone detail focused in this business. So you could bring somebody in to do that, even if it's just part-time. So it's the combination of the systems and the team that really make a successful business. That's something that we've been working at non-stop since we started Yellow Lettings. We've got a great team now, and we've got some pretty good systems, but it's taken a long time to get to this stage, and it's something that we're going to continuously keep working at and improving because it's the absolute engine of the business.
It is, but all that being said, it's often a reactive business. Things just happen. You can change the word things for other stuff, but things just happen and you have to react and solve it. So, as Rob said, there's many stories of different scenarios that can play out, and some of them quite humorous. However, you can do your best to minimise those events occurring by doing certain things. So obviously finding the right tenants, so good referencing, and maybe some sort of rental insurance as well. Give the tenants all the info they need up front, so they're not going to keep coming back to you every few minutes asking questions. Inspections are very important. Little tip if you do this, or you self-manage, we check the property after 6 weeks, which doesn't sound a lot, but the thought behind it is, if things are going to go wrong, they're going to go wrong early on. So our first inspection is actually quite soon after we put them in, because we're going to notice if things are falling down at that point, not waiting 6 months for the property to get wrecked and trashed before we walk in and go, oh. So we do that after 6 weeks. So there's lots of things you can do, which don't sound like big things, and they're not, but lots of little things can save a lot of problems, big problems, further down the line.
And finally, you'll need some kind of way of knowing if you're doing a good job or not. So If you're making money, it is one thing to look at, but you also need to make sure that you're providing a good service. So KPIs, key performance indicators. In our business, we always make sure that we focus on two sets of numbers. We focus on numbers that show us how we're doing financially, and also numbers that show how we're doing in terms of service, because you need to balance out those two things. There's no point providing a great service if you're going to go broke next month, and there's no point making loads of money. Well, some people would argue with this, but I'd say there's no point making piles of money if there's lots of unhappy people as a result. So it's the whole idea of what gets measured gets managed. So in a lettings business, what are you wanting to track? Well, things like vacancy rates, things like how long it takes you to let a property. You could do customer satisfaction surveys, all that kind of thing. It's going to be different depending on your niche and exactly what it is that you're doing. But as a general concept, just kind of like how you feel about your business on any given day isn't enough of a barometer of how you're going. So make sure that you're consciously tracking specific numbers and benchmarking yourself against those over time. If you've picked the right numbers, you'll keep improving the right things and you'll end up with a company that gets better and better. But of course, you won't have the perfect business from the start. And we've certainly made some mistakes along the way.
We have. A few of you are probably thinking, are these two mad? They're teaching everybody how to set up agencies and when they run one. Well, you could even say we went a bit further because we did a whole podcast on mistakes we made from running a letting agency. And trust us, there was a lot, because it's a big thing setting up a letting agency. However, we like to be transparent and open with our knowledge and information, so we've done a podcast on the mistakes we made. We'll link to it in the show notes. We're going to mention a few more links. We've already mentioned some books and news stories. If you want the show notes this week, go to thepropertyhub.net/agency. That's thepropertyhub.net/agency. So, how can you apply this to your own portfolio? We've talked about if you want to set up your own agency, but I appreciate that there's only going to be a smaller part of the listeners, the audience, who will do that. So, how can you do this if you're self-managing? Well, there's a few things you need to consider if you want to be hands-on. You could consider training, like Rob's been through. You might find that useful. If you've never done it before, it's probably a good idea. Definitely build your own systems and checklists. That's going to be critical if you're self-managing. Otherwise, you'll just be a mess and you'll be here, there, and everywhere. Build your own team. Now, that doesn't mean necessarily full-time staff. That could be contractors. It could be someone just do a bit of admin for you. It might be just a few hours a week. But don't try and do everything on your own. You might be good at fixing things, but you might not be good with people. As Rob said, we all have our skills and our strengths. So hire people to fit around those strengths and weaknesses. And then, of course, if you are self-managing, it might be worth tracking your time. If you're finding you're dumping loads and loads of hours into it, you might find it's more efficient to use a letting agency. But you don't know unless you track your time. And that comes back to the KPIs point as well. Maybe you have KPIs and that's one of them that you can use. But if you do all those things, which are similar to a letting agency, that will improve your experience of managing your own portfolio.
Now, as we mentioned, we've got a lot of other podcasts covering lettings and management. So whether it's for you or whether it's for other people, there's loads and loads that you can learn from these episodes. You can go and find them all, by the way, by going and using the nifty new categories feature at thepropertyhub.net/podcast. But there's an absolute bunch of them. They'll all be linked in the show notes as well. We talk about how to prepare your property to let, how to handle a nightmare tenant, how to manage a property yourself, how to let a property yourself. Those lessons from running a letting agent that we mentioned, how to get your property let fast, and the all-important, if not all that exciting, lettings law that you need to know. So all of those are going to be, So all of those are going to be linked at thepropertyhub.net/agency, which are this week's show notes. There's so much in those. So get your notepad out or Evernote if you are so inclined and jot down some notes from those if this is something that you're looking to learn more about, because there's an absolute ton of information in all of those.
And as you can see, there's a ton of information in the podcast as a whole. If you haven't subscribed yet, then you probably should. It's super simple. Do it on your phone, on your podcast app. Find the Property Podcast and subscribe. So if you're watching this through YouTube or on your desktop, get it on your phone, and it'll send it to you every single week. And of course, it's free. Use a podcast app. If you've got iTunes, they've got their own podcast app. Or if you've got Android, there's plenty of them. Try it out and subscribe. And you know what else you should try out once you've subscribed? It's leaving us a lovely review. That's exactly what Aaron has done. Hi, Rob and Rob. I discovered your podcast about a month ago after attending the St Albans property meetup. Since then, I've become addicted and I've nearly finished listening to them all. I'm a newbie investor. I've been educating myself for about 18 months now. And thanks to your informative and inspiring podcasts, I'm about to take the plunge into property and hopefully do my first flip in the next couple of months. I'll also be attending the Property Investor Show at Excel next week. Look forward to meeting you both then. All the best, Aaron. Obviously, we're a little bit behind with our reviews. The Property Investor Show was some time ago. But thank you, Aaron. We are catching up on the reviews, but we appreciate that we've got so many to read out. And lovely 5 stars as well. So thank you very much.
An excellent choice to attend the St Albans meetup. A great meetup it is too.
Oh, I'll be there next month, December one. And the meetup leader, and I'm sure this is unrelated, has promised mince pies. So I'm definitely going there next month. So if you're already planning your next meetup, if you like mince pies, go to St Albans.
Okay, so let's wrap up with our resource of the week. And we need to say thank you to Bruce for this one, who emailed in to tell us about an app called Driver's Note. So that's driversnote.com. And this is an app that you use to record your mileage. And Bruce says that he uses this to track the mileage that he does to viewings and to do maintenance and things like that. Now, why does he do that? Is it because he's an extremely boring guy who has weird hobbies? No, the reason he does that is because you can offset all of that against tax. So any mileage that you're doing for your property portfolio, you can claim a deduction against your tax, which, let's face it, we all could do with paying a little bit less of. And Bruce says that this app makes it really easy. You just sort of hit start and stop at the beginning and end of each journey, and then it'll send you a PDF each month, which will show you it all broken down, and it gives you that audit trail to make sure that HMRC can't come back and question anything. So thank you very much, Bruce, for that one. That's driversnote.com, which will be linked to in the show notes as well.
Thank you, Bruce. Next week, I think you're going to enjoy this one. Rob and I are going to look at some of the deals we've been working on recently. Well, we might not be pleased to say, but for your knowledge and education, you'll be pleased that it hasn't been smooth sailing in all the cases. So next week, make sure you join us. We'll talk about what went well, what didn't go so well, and what we're working on next. So that's our latest investments next week. We know these are super popular episodes, so make sure you don't miss us next Thursday for that. Also, just a quick mention, we're going to mention this at the Yellow and RMP Day, which is coming out soon, which is long sold out, but we will be launching Yellow Lettings in London in the next few weeks. I know a lot of people have tried to use us for management in London. We're taking on a handful just as testing, but we're going there full time now. If you are interested, go to yellowlettings.net/LDN. That's LDN. See, London? See what we did there?
Very good. All right. So that is us done for another week. I hope you got loads and loads out of this episode. We've talked about a heck of a lot. You can go and find all of it at thepropertyhub.net/agency. And while you're over there at thepropertyhub.net, take a look around. Take a free course, jump on the forum. It's looking fantastic now. There's so much going on over there. We would love to see you. We'll be back on Tuesday with Ask Rob and Rob, and then back here next Thursday to talk about our latest deals. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to The Property Podcast. For show notes, all our past episodes, and to leave a review, go to thepropertyhub.net/podcast.